This is Shane with Twin Links Astrology. I am doing this video as a follow-up to my prior video where I examined some of the collective energies and unpacked a little bit of what to expect on a collective level with this upcoming Aquarius full moon. So if you're interested, check out that video. With this video, we are going to be looking at each rising sign individually and unpacking some of the themes you can expect on an individual level to possibly come up based on your rising sign. Now, if you don't know your rising sign, check out your sun or moon sign. You might find the information there to be relevant. But with that being said, we'll jump right into it. All right, so Aries and Aries rising. This full moon is taking place in your 11th house. This is a house of friend circles, social groups, organizations of any kind. It can also speak to large corporations. So if you work for a large company, it could fall into the 11th house as well. And it's highlighting the 5th, 11th axis. Now, before we get into those delineations, you've had Saturn transiting your first house for most of this year, as well as Neptune. Now, these are two very different energies because on one hand, Neptune is a planet of spirituality. It can be associated with illusions, disillusionment, but it also can be very inspiring. It can be somewhat akin to Jupiter in that it can inspire us to see higher possibilities, higher potentials, right? Things that are perhaps an illusion right now, but you can perceive, perhaps especially with Saturn also in your first house, how to make dreams a reality. And with this trine from Neptune to the Sun, Jupiter, Cazimi, which again, Jupiter is also a planet of expansion, including expanding your perspective. It's really allowing you to see higher manifestations of how you want your life to be. Now, we still have Saturn to deal with. Saturn has just turned retrograde in your first house, and Saturn in many ways is opposed to this expansionary sort of energy of Neptune and Jupiter. While Jupiter and Neptune are more expansionary, Saturn is the planet of restriction. It's a planet of contraction. Where Jupiter expands, Saturn contracts. So what we're seeing here is a bit of a push and pull, where Saturn is going to try to pop holes in some of the loftier ideals that Jupiter and Neptune can see. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Because oftentimes, without a grounding counterbalance of a planet like Saturn, we can get carried away, and it can sometimes result in disillusionment where you could see the possibility, but then it quickly becomes a situation where it was just a dream, or it was just a pipe dream or something like that. So here, Saturn in many ways is keeping you from getting too carried away with fantasy. It's asking you to stay grounded, stay based in reality. And that's ultimately a good thing, I think. However, it could also be, for some, a feeling of over restriction. It's like you can see the things that you want to do, the things that you want for yourself, but you're under the thumb in some way. You're being restricted externally from truly being able to manifest what it is that is important to you. Now, nevertheless, Jupiter and the Sun, this cazimi, it's really powerful energy in your fifth house. And the fifth house speaks of creativity, romance. It's also the house of children. It is the house of good fortune. It's a good house. Really, the 11th house is also a good house. So this full moon may not be as challenging for Aries strictly because of the houses that are involved, but there is nevertheless going to be some tension. I can see this as manifesting as some sort of boredom with the mundane routines of life. And I'll explain exactly why I think that's the case in just a moment. But with Jupiter here transiting your fifth house, where it will be for the next year, there's going to be expanded opportunities, expanded ideas of what leisure and recreation means. And Aries, they're cardinal fire. Aries has a lust for life, and it's very important for Aries and Aries risings to feel alive. And if somehow you found yourself getting bogged down in routines in just daily life in general, this is going to come into acute focus during this full moon period. Now, with it occurring on the 5th and 11th, like I said, the 11th house is all about it can speak to friend circles, group memberships, organizational memberships, all that kind of stuff. And so it could be that you may find, and especially with Pluto having been transiting through this house, there's going to be a transformation. It also is about your higher goals. And so you may be in the process of redefining what are my big, and this is like big goals, overarching goals. And how does that fit into my life? Are these goals I've set for myself, setting myself up for happiness? Because that's ultimately what we all want. So we also have Mars and Venus in your third house. Mars is in your third house. Venus is in the sixth house. Both of these houses, to some extent, speak to our daily routines in different ways. So the third house is your local community. It's the neighborhood. It can speak to siblings, neighbors. It can speak to certain family members, extended family, stuff like that. Not necessarily your parents, but your siblings, aunts and uncles, that kind of stuff. It also is the house of communication. It's the house of, it can also be associated with contracts. And the sixth house is the house of our daily routines, our daily chores. While the 10th house is all about the overall career, the sixth house is what you're doing on a daily basis. It's relationships with coworkers. It's the tasks, it's generally like the smaller tasks that we need to do as part of our job, but also can just be our daily tasks in general, right? Keeping the house clean, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, right? All of that sort of mundane, routine, day-to-day stuff. And there's a real tension here with this Mars square to Venus, where it's highlighting some degree of displeasure with some aspect of these houses. Whether it's being bored in a job, not feeling fulfilled, right? Venus doesn't like being in Virgo or being in the sixth house. In many ways, she represents kind of the opposite of what the sixth house represents, right? Venus prefers to be somewhere like the fifth house, which is creativity, pleasure, enjoying life. And life is not very enjoyable for Venus in this house. So keep in mind that this is just temporary energy. Venus will be entering Libra in August. So, that's something to keep in mind. This is not a permanent sort of fixture. But here, one of the, some of the challenges here is that Mars is wanting to push forward in some way. And Mars, in a sign like Gemini, really can sometimes want to rush through things, as can Aries, right? Aries is known for sometimes jumping the gun a little bit because they want to to move quickly through things. But Venus here being in Virgo, Virgo is mercurial sign. It's all about the details. And one potential pitfall I see here with Mars and Venus being configured in such a way for Aries and Aries risings is there may be a temptation to want to push forward with something, whether it be a contract, for example, whether it be some sort of contractual arrangement or some work project, some sort of communication without fully going over the details. And so I would really advise taking a step back, slowing down, not signing anything before you fully know what you are signing. And this is underscored by the fact that we have Mercury, who is no longer in retrograde, but still in its retrograde shadow. Still, we still have a potential for retrograde like themes until Mercury exits that shadow, which is going to be later in August. So this is certainly a time to slow down. This is a time to really go over the fine print before you sign anything. Otherwise, you may find that you've either missed something important or you're going to have to go back and redo something, or worst case scenario, you find yourself in some sort of contract or some sort of obligation that was not what you thought you signed up for. But really beyond that, I do think that with the South Node having entered your fifth house, you're going to be redefining to some extent what it is that makes you excited about life, because this is the house of fun. It's a house of excitement. It's a house of enjoying life. And so with the South Node transiting this sign, it's going to ask you to, well, it's not going to ask you. You're going to feel as though certain things that may have given you joy in the past just don't really do it for you anymore. And that's normal, right? We all have things that we get into and then we lose interest and move on to the next thing. And the North Node having just entered your 11th, this is incoming energy. And so you may find that if you play like team sports, for example, you may be like, man, I don't think I'm going to do it again this season, recreational sports or something. Or this could be like for those who have kids, it could be like, oh, your child was, obsessed with swimming or horseback riding or something, but now they just could not care less and they want to move on to something else. And so if you find that to be the case for either yourself or perhaps your children, if you have them, this is likely why. And it's just about the way that we transform and grow as people. And it's completely normal. And we're also seeing here Jupiter with the sun. Probably it's not as though you're going to be just completely losing your lust for life. That's not really how it works, especially with Jupiter here. You're going to be presented with perhaps new opportunities for recreation, for fun, for all that kind of stuff. Now, one thing I will say is that the 11th house is the fifth house from the seventh. So if we start in the seventh house is all about partnerships, relationships. So if we want to look at things related to the partner, we set the seventh house as if it were the first and then count from there. So the second house, your eighth house is your partner's second house. So that's why the eighth house talks about your partner's finances, your partner's income. And then if we go to the third, fourth, and then fifth, the 11th house is going to be your partner's fifth house, represented symbolically in your chart. So one potential pitfall here is a difference of opinion between how your partner defines what fun and leisure and romance and creativity is and how you define it. And so with there being a full moon, a very charged full moon here, there's a potential for some disagreement if for those who are in relationships with what you do for fun, right? And I think it's completely, again, normal. We're all different. We all have different ideas of what that means. But there might be discussions along those lines. And I would just exercise caution again with Mars here being in the third house. There's a tendency towards more aggressive communication. And so again, this underscores the need to kind of slow down and have a conversation where you're really listening and with both parties really listening. And I think that I don't see this being a incredibly challenging period, but these are just some of the themes I think you can expect. So that's really what I had for you, Aries, and I hope that this full moon goes well for you, and we will catch you in the next video. Thanks so much. All right, Taurus. So for Taurus risings, this full moon is going to be taking place along a very important axis in your chart, and that is 4th and 10th houses. So the 4th house is all about our roots, our home, our family, our upbringing, our all of those things. It's our roots. This is the most grounded, deepest part of the chart. And the full moon is happening right on the midheaven at the highest point of the chart. The 10th house is about your career, your public persona, the recognition, the way you're viewed by the world. And so this is a very important lunation because the moon is here at the very top of the chart, and it's going to be highlighting some really important themes for Taurus and Taurus risings, especially involving career and the tension between career and home. Now, with Uranus here having been in your 2nd house for some time now, there have likely been unexpected changes either in because the 2nd house is the house of earned income values, including how you value your work and services, how you value yourself overall. And Uranus is a wild card planet, and so it's throwing a monkey wrench into some aspect of that, whether it be unexpected, and again, this could be quite positive. It could be unexpected opportunities as far as earning income, unexpected changes in how you value your work. Taurus, as a sign, is about values. Values are very important for Taurus. They normally have a very, very good sense of their values. However, with Uranus having been in your 1st house for the past prior 8 years before entering your 2nd, you might have gone through a period where you've had to review those values and renegotiate with yourself what is really important. Now, with Mars here, there is a added drive and ambition for 2nd house topics, whether it be I'm not charging enough for my services, or it's adding energy where there is a push to either perhaps earn more money or perhaps to revise some aspects of values. Now, this Mars is squaring Venus, which is your chart ruler, which is in Virgo, in your 5th house, highlighting a tension between these two planets and these two houses. The 5th house is all about pleasure, creativity. It's about enjoying life. It's about the things that we do in our free time when we aren't working, when we aren't earning money, as reflected in the 2nd and 10th house. And with there being this superior square from Mars, it may feel as though there's some sort of imbalance. Are you working too hard? Are you not able to enjoy the things that you once were able to? And is it because of demands from work, or is it because of perhaps redefining what that looks like? With these planets, and you can't see the aspect, but we have the sesquiquadrate, the sesquiquadrate aspect, channeling that energy into the full moon. What we're seeing here is the career being highlighted, whether it be I'm working way too much and this is not sustainable because I'm not able to enjoy a life, or I want a job that allows me to enjoy myself more. I need more free time, something like that. Or really, um, this job just isn't fulfilling me in the way that I thought it would, or in a way that I really feel like I need to, or I'm not being valued. I'm not being valued for the work that I do. And so this is coming into acute focus right now. And so this is certainly a time where it is, and with the sun Jupiter here, this is bringing perhaps expansion in fourth house topics, whether it's renovating a house, whether it's, perhaps moving a new residence, or just emphasizing the importance of family life too, which is opposed here to work. So if you've been feeling as though there is something is out of balance in terms of your career, it's going to be most likely brought into acute focus during this full moon period. Now, with the North Node and South Node entering also the fourth and 10th house axis, this is new incoming energy. So, this having the North Node in particular, having just entered this house, I see this as a real positive for Taurus risings, because this promises new opportunities for those who find themselves somehow unsatisfied with the course of their career. The North Node is expansion. So whether it be that the opportunities to either pivot to a different career, or even within the job company you work for, if you have your own business, you will likely be seeing expanded opportunities in this sector of your life. Now, the South Node, of course, has just entered your fourth house. So there's going to be some sort of release here, whether it be, again, this could be relocating for some people. It could also be downsizing, renovating, right? Getting rid of the old, clearing things out, making your space nicer, and this is, I think it's necessary, right? I just spent a long time getting rid of a bunch of stuff that I no longer needed. I definitely believe that objects, items, they have energetic signatures, and that can pile up, and it can sometimes lead to a just kind of a heaviness that I think was, you don't really notice it until you get rid of a bunch of stuff, and it's like, wow, it just feels lighter here overall. So, you know, that might be a theme for some Tauruses, but overall, it's, I do see on one hand a tremendous potential here of incoming opportunities in terms of career, especially for those who feel stuck or stagnant in some way, while feeling like they're not able to enjoy life as much. There's certainly the promise of new opportunities if you're able to recognize them and go after them, with Uranus here in the second, which is also another work related house. I think that just underscores what I think is going to be a real exciting period for Taurus and Taurus risings. So that's mostly what I had. I wish you the best of luck during the rest of this month, and thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. All right, Gemini rising. This lunation is taking place in your ninth house of foreign travel, higher education, religion, spirituality. This is a really good house. I love this house. And it's the sun is in your third house of local neighborhood, neighbors, siblings, day-to-day communications, contracts, all of that stuff. And we see here Uranus and Mars both in your first house. Now, the first thing that I think of when I see these two planets transiting the first house is personal autonomy and independence. Both of these planets, especially when they're in fire and air signs, and really, especially air, especially Aquarius and Gemini, is a need for personal independence, carving one's own path, and not necessarily having the same sort of tolerance for the status quo that one might have had in earlier times. And so here, with the full moon taking place in the ninth house of expanding horizons in so many different contexts, and we have it in the third house where we have Jupiter, which is a planet of also expanding horizons. I see here themes relating to being able to see something bigger and higher on the horizon. And I think it's actually a real exciting time for Gemini risings, because you will, if you haven't already, you will be starting to see potential for expansion in these areas of your life. Now, for some, that might be opportunities to move abroad. With the North Node here, this represents increase. So for some Geminis who have wanted to, move abroad, this could be a time where you are seriously considering um, moving for some reason. It could also be, now that's not going to just be for everybody, but this is also the house of long distance travel. So this is like, even a move to a different part of the country, whatever country you're in, could fall under this as well. This is about higher learning. So if you've been wanting to go to law school, go to grad school, go to medical school, or even just getting more education in some area, taking new classes, new language classes, for example, this is something that these all fall into the ninth house. And this is underscored by the fact that your chart ruler, Mercury, has been retrograding in the second house of values, earned income, self-worth, all of that. There's been a review period of those topics as Mercury has now come out of retrograde. So for some, it may feel like, there's a need for changes in either the level of earned income, how you earn income, how you value things, including your own work, including your own services. Now, what we also see here is Mars squaring Venus, Mars in your first house squaring Venus in the fourth house. So with Venus here under this challenging aspect, the superior square from Mars, and also in a sign that she doesn't particularly enjoy being in, Virgo, she's debilitated here. We see some sort of dissatisfaction, perhaps with some aspect of your home life. That could be as simple as just your immediate environment. Oh, I really want to refresh. I'm sick of this couch. It's a very basic example. I want to get a new couch, or I need to redecorate, or even this could also be a desire perhaps for renovating in some aspect. And with this also occurring in the fourth house of family, this can talk about parents and really just immediate family in general, not necessarily a spouse or partner, but it could include it if it's if you live together, if you cohabitate. But there's a potential here for some sort of dispute. So this is something to keep in mind, especially as tensions are high during this full moon, and both of these planets are in the sesquiquadrate aspect to the full moon, tense aspect. The good news is that with Jupiter here, conjunct with the sun in your third house, the third house represents communication. So if there is some sort of disagreement or dispute, there should be some sort of favorable resolution, because this is the house of communication, and Jupiter is benefic planet, and so I do like seeing that there. Any any disputes or disagreements should be favorably resolved. Of course, that's going to depend on individual charts and what planets in the natal chart are being lit up during this lunation. But beyond that, I think one thing I forgot to mention is with Jupiter here again being in the third house of your local community, right? Short distance travel and neighbors, the sort of grassroots part of our life. It could be that there's opportunities on a local level that could unlock some sort of ninth house level. Maybe it's going to a local college for classes. Maybe it's, you meet somebody locally that can introduce you to some sort of life expanding, horizon expanding opportunity. So it's something to watch out for. You're also kind of released with the South Node here going through your third house. You're asked to be, or you're being asked to shed some outdated, whether it's outdated, and this is also the house of daily. This is one of the houses of daily routine, so you might be going through a bit of a renovation in that department. So if you feel as though this part of your life is stagnant, whether it's just I'm over where I'm living right now and I want to move, or I need to change something about my day-to-day life. That's probably going to be coming up for review over the course of the year. But with Jupiter here, I like to see it here. It's going to likely be a not as difficult of a shedding of those old themes as it might otherwise be. Not that it's inherently difficult, but you likely won't find it to be super uncomfortable. So that's mostly what I had for this full moon. Thank you so much for watching Gemini and Gemini Rising, and we will catch you in the next video. All right, Cancer Rising. This full moon is taking place in your 8th house here in Aquarius. Now, this is going to be very important for Cancers, not just because it's happening in your 8th house, but because Cancer is the sign that is ruled by the moon. So in many ways, you may be feeling this energy even more than on some of the other signs. But really what you can expect here is a check-in point for Pluto's transit through this house up until this point. Now, this moon is very closely conjunct to Pluto. It's actually going to be at 6 degrees. I just had to adjust it for Cancer Rising. So this actual chart is a little bit before the actual full moon. But the 8th house is a house that scares a lot of people, but really it's about transformation, right? It's, ancients considered it one like associated with death, but it's not usually literal. It's any sort of transformation requires a death and rebirth process. So that in and of itself is really the way I tend to see the 8th house. It's a transformative house. It can be sometimes related to power struggles, power dynamics, intimacy with a partner, because it is the 2nd house away from the 7th, which is the 7th is a house of partnerships. It can speak to your partner's income. So for some Cancer risings, there may be explosive changes in your partner's income with Pluto being there, because Pluto is also a planet of profound transformation. And there are some overlaps between Plutonian themes and 8th house themes. They're not, I don't want to say that Pluto is synonymous with the 8th house. There are some overlapping themes, but there are areas of mutual exclusivity here. But what we're seeing, generally with 8th house is things like power dynamics. It can also speak to debts, other people's money, which debt is essentially, it can speak to inheritances. It can speak to hidden aspects of ourselves and others. This is one of the more psychological houses in many ways. So you might be feeling very heightened emotions just by it not only being a full moon, but also being in this house. So it's something to keep in mind. Now, we see the Jupiter Sun Cazimi taking place in your second house. And with Jupiter now in your second house, this is the house of earned income, values, how you value yourself, how you value your work, how you value the services that you provide. And so Jupiter here with the sun, it's really quite a positive counterbalance to this Plutonian lunar energy taking place on the opposite side of the chart. With Jupiter having entered this house, it could be bringing in, if it hasn't already, new ways to earn income, potential for a promotion at work, potential for a new way of valuing an increase in self-worth, increased uh, cognizance of the true value of the things that you do. If you have been feeling undervalued in a work context or in really any context, this is going to be shining a light on that. You may be feeling dissatisfied with some aspects of how you value yourself and how you value what it is that you do. So, with the eighth house being lit up, though, there could be some component of I can see what it is that I deserve, or I can see, there's it could on a very like mundane level, for example, it's like, oh, there's a potential for a promotion at work, but it requires some sort of perhaps difficult transformation, whether it's, for example, moving, whether it's having to relocate, or whether it's having to leave the team that you worked with, or something like that. There's an element of, in order to get what Jupiter is is offering here, there's going to have to be some sort of transformation involved. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, with the second house also speaking to your partner's assets, your partner's income, for those of you who are, in a partnership or a marriage, there are potential issues that could arise, or it's brought into focus, whether it's about some changes in your partner's income or your income that need uh, that require some sort of adjustment in some way. What we are also seeing is Mars in your 12th house squaring Venus in your third house. So with Mars in the 12th, it sometimes can be a period of heightened anxiety, right? Because Mars is that drive, that ambition. But the 12th house is an unconscious house. And so a lot of times when we have Mars in this place in the chart, it can just result in heightened anxiety that we don't exactly know where it's coming from. So if you are feeling that, I can tell you it's probably coming from here. And so it's, again, Mars is only going to be in the 12th up until, I want to say, in August. It moves into your first house, which will at least be out of that house. But not every Cancer rising is going to be feeling heightened anxiety. But if you do, it's going to be most likely something to do with Mars here. Now, with Mars in the 12th squaring Venus in your third house, the third house is about communication, your day-to-day life, your local area, its neighbors, siblings. It's also a house of friends, so it could also speak to friendship to some extent. There's a potential for communication issues here, feeling anxious about some aspect of your day-to-day life. There's a potential for disputes, perhaps Not guaranteed, but there is some sort of potential here just because this is a house of communication. Venus does not do well in Virgo. She's debilitated here. And so there could be some sense of inadequacy when it comes to issues surrounding communication. And this is taking place while Mercury is out of retrograde. It's moving direct, but it's still moving very, very slow. It's still sluggish. It's still in its pre-retrograde shadow. And so this Mercury is not out of the woods yet, and it's taking place in your first house. So there's still a potential for lingering brain fog, not being able to really perceive things as sharply, just because Mercury is in your first house and it's not, it's gaining speed, it's moving faster. So there is a light kind of at the end of the tunnel here, but it's ruling Gemini in the 12th house and Virgo in the third. So again, communication issues, anxiety, these are potential themes with these planets arranged in such a way in these houses. And they're both here in the sesquiquadrate aspect, which is a 135-degree aspect, similar to a square. It's of the nature of a square, and it's directed precisely at this full moon. So again, there's potential these issues coming to the surface during this full moon because the moon, it represents our emotions, our feelings. And so this is certainly a period of time where staying grounded, getting out in nature if you can, if you're feeling overwhelmed, overthinking, really, if you can meditate, that could help some of the overthinking that could be a possibility here with Mars in your 12th. But grounding energy is going to be very important during this time, and really not letting yourself get carried away by your emotions. And I think here with, as a Cancer rising, there's Cancer as a water sign is an intuitive sign. And I can see here intuition being potentially drowned out by all the static that's going on elsewhere. So that just underscores the importance of staying grounded, keeping a clear head to the extent that you can, taking good care of yourself, and being able to sort of cut through all the bullshit that might be going on, and staying true to what is and feels authentic to you during this time. Beyond that, I do think that Uranus being here in your 12th house during this lunation is actually a really good thing. The reason why is that, like I said before, the 12th house is often a house that speaks to our unconscious sort of patterns, unconscious, perhaps fears, things that aren't really brought to life. Sometimes this can result in self-sabotage because we're not really aware. It's a house of hidden enemies, and quite often those enemies can be it's ourself, right? As somebody who is very guilty of self-sabotage, and I've got my Mercury in 12th house Cancer, I know that firsthand. Now, with Uranus here, Uranus is an awakening energy. It's known as being disruptive. A lot of people are afraid of Uranus, but Uranus has a way of shaking you out of a trance in a way that few other planets can really do. And with it having a direct line of communication to this full moon, this is a potential where if you have been feeling tension boiling over and you can't really get to the source of it, Uranus may be providing you with a sudden, profound insight as to what is at the root of those issues. So pay attention to anything that comes into your head, especially during this full moon period, because it could provide a solution. At the very least, I think for many Cancer risings who, if you have been dealing with some sort of blockage, some sort of dissatisfaction, some sort of anxiety, you may be it may be revealed here. It may be brought into the conscious mind, because the eighth house, unlike the 12th, the eighth house is a more conscious house. And when I see the energy flowing here, it's like I can see the potential for issues being brought to light. So I think that's a good thing, because at least when you can identify the source of any issues that you're having, that is the first step in addressing them, right? Until we make as Carl Jung said, I think it's something like, until you make the unconscious conscious, you're subject to fate, or something like that. It was more eloquent than that, but basically, this is really going to, for many cancer risings, provide a light bulb moment, an aha moment, where you can see things more clearly, more lucidly than you've been able to. And I think that is going to be a tremendously positive thing. So that's really what I had for you guys, Cancer. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next video. Take care. Leos and Leo risings. This full moon is going to be taking place in your seventh house, in Aquarius, seventh house of relationships. We often think of romantic relationships when we talk about the seventh house, but the seventh house refers more generally to any invested relationship, whether it be a really good friend, whether it be a client relationship, ongoing relationships where both parties have invested into it over time. So again, most commonly we see romantic partnerships, but it does apply to any sort of deeper sort of friendship. It's not really acquaintances, that's more 11th house, or kind of casual friendships or relationships. That's not really seventh. Seventh is the, like, your best friend, your good friends, the ones that you've been there for them, they've been there for you, that kind of stuff. So Jupiter and the Sun, Cazimi, is happening in your first house. So these are big, angular, heavy-hitting houses. So this lunation maybe felt more acutely by Leos than some other signs. But what we see with it taking place right next to Pluto. Pluto's been in your seventh house for a couple of years now, and Pluto has been transforming the way that you negotiate relationships. Pluto is a planet of profound transformation. Pluto digs deep. It gets to the bottom of things. So relationships that no longer serve our highest and best purposes are likely to either be falling away, or they're going to be transformed so significantly that whatever comes out on the other side is not going to look anything like what it looked like before. And this can be challenging. I'm a Leo rising, and so I've been dealing with this acutely, especially for early degree Leo placements who have had planets under an opposition from this Pluto. This is profoundly redefining the way you relate to others. And this full moon is highlighting that in a big way. Now, with Jupiter having entered your first house, Jupiter is opposing, just having come off of this opposition from Pluto. Jupiter is, on one hand, really providing new ways of relating to yourself. When Jupiter transits your first house, you may find yourself getting more attention from other people. You may find yourself, people just really wanting to know you, to be around you. It's and Leos are, that's something that Leo, especially Leo suns, generally emanate this warmth that people want to be around Leos. They are just naturally, they exude that energy. But Pluto and Aquarius, when it comes to the deeper, more significant relationships, it's, there's a tension there, right? Because we we need to be able to balance ourselves with the other. And if we're too imbalanced where we aren't really giving enough in a relationship, that's going to be highlighted here. Or if we are giving too much of ourselves, because it could go either way. There's so many ways we can be imbalanced, but Pluto here is helping us to refine the way that we show up in relationships. We also have the South Node, which has just entered your first house. So eclipses will be taking place in Leo and Aquarius over the next year or year and a half to 2 years. And the South Node here is helping us evolve along with Pluto, where we are being asked to shed old versions of ourselves that no longer serve our highest purposes. And whether it be highlighted through relationships, right? If you aren't feeling as though you are getting recognized for the way you show up in a relationship, or on the other hand, you feel like, oh, I'm not showing up enough. Maybe I need to adjust the way I'm doing it. It's going to require a shedding of old ways of relating to yourself, because the way we relate to others derives first and foremost on the way that we relate to ourselves. So the South Node here asking you to release old version of Leo is ultimately going to profoundly benefit the way that you show up in relationships. So with Jupiter, though, Jupiter expands the South Node is release point. So there is a tendency with Jupiter in the first house to kind of want to go overboard, whether it be overly in the spotlight, overindulgence. These are just some potential manifestations. I don't see it as crazy for most Leos. When Mars enters Leo later this year, there's more of a potential for that. But right now, with Mars still being in Gemini, it's not at this time likely to be too over the top. But we do have Mars in your 11th house squaring Venus in the second. And so this is going to highlight some additional tension with the Sun Jupiter Cazimi being right there in your first house. The 11th house is about, friend circles, social groups, organizations that you're a part of. Your long-term goals fall into this house, your life goals. And Venus in the second house is all about our values, how we value ourselves, how we value our services, how we value the work we do, and our earned income. And so when we have this tension here from the superior square from Mars, it's bringing that into focus. Do the groups that I belong to, how does that fit in with my values? Are they in line with what I consider to be important? We also have Uranus in your 11th house, the planet of disrupting change, right? Innovation, new ways of seeing and doing things. So there is likely to be some sort of review of that department of your life, including your overall goals. What are the most important goals? Where do I see myself? And am I heading in that direction? Do I need to redefine those goals? Do they still resonate with my current life path? With Venus in the second, there's likely to be some sort of dissatisfaction with, especially for those of you who have Virgo placements, or really anything within 21 degrees of any of the mutable signs, including Sagittarius and Pisces. But there's likely to be some sort of dissatisfaction with either, should I be charging more for my services? Because the 11th also includes large corporations. So anybody who works for a very large corporation could be like a feeling of being underpaid, undervalued, not recognized, all that sort of stuff. Now, With Uranus here providing this trine to the full moon, this is likely to be symbolizing new opportunities coming in, whether it's like finding new groups, finding new networking opportunities that could provide new, important new relationships, which in turn could provide for new opportunities as far as income goes, as far as reevaluating the work you're doing, reevaluating the services you're providing, or whatever it is that you do. If you own your own business, again, new opportunities could arise. And we also have the sextile to the Jupiter Sun Cazimi still very much in play during this time. So definitely pay attention to any opportunities that arise, because most likely going to be the result of this Uranus Jupiter sextile. Again, it's not going to be for everybody, especially for those who have early degree Leo placements in the first decan, first 10 degrees or so of Leo or Gemini. What we do see is, potential for Uranus kind of showing you a way out of this gridlock that you might be feeling with these planets arranged in the sky in such a way. And with the North Node now entering Aquarius, with Uranus trine Pluto, trining this full moon, the house of significant relationships, the house of friend circles, group memberships, networking, it could be that there's even perhaps a opportunity, you might meet somebody, a potential romantic partner, through either friend circle, through some sort of group that you're a part of, perhaps even through work. Again, if you work for a large corporation, it's really not including smaller companies. Or it could be that through a partner, through a friend, you're introduced to new groups. So it could work both ways here. This energy is flowing each way here. So I do see, hints of a promising new chapter for Leos and Leo risings here that this full moon is sort of heralding. And if we are able to work with Pluto, which is a difficult planet to work with, we may find that what this house looks like after, even in a year could be very, very different from where things are right now. And ultimately, though, it's about shedding the old to make room for the new here. Now, of course, with Pluto, this being a full moon conjunct Pluto, for those who are in relationships, this is a time to be extra careful, because we've got Mars and Venus channeling this difficult energy. This is a sesqui quadrate aspect, 135 degrees. So a square, squares are tense, a square and a half. This is not as potent or strong as a square, but it is still exact. It doesn't look exact because we're not quite there. I just have it adjusted for Leo risings. But this is an exact aspect. And so with the relationship significators of Mars and Venus, with the moon and Pluto at the apex of this iron yod, there is a potential for disputes. There just is. And especially with Venus ruling your third house of communication, we just want to be extra careful. If emotions start hitting a fever pitch, it may be time to get out, clear your head, get into nature. This, of course, is not going to be for every Leo or Leo rising. It's going to depend a lot on your natal chart and what's activated, but it's just something to watch out for, because this is happening in the house of relationships. So, and the moon represents our emotions being brought into the forefront, everybody's minds and hearts at this time. So just be careful. But again, this is not going to be for everybody. just something to keep in mind. Beyond that, I think that's really mostly what I wanted to cover for Leos and Leo risings. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you next time. Take care. All right, Virgo rising. This full moon is taking place in your sixth house of daily routines, daily work, basically your day-to-day life. This house, the sixth house, is often equated with the sign of Virgo, but they're not completely synonymous. I do think there's a lot of overlapping themes, but this house is really about service to others. And that's a sign that, or that's something that Virgo as a sign is known for. It's about doing those daily things that aren't necessarily fun, but they're the things that we have to do, right? For ourselves, for other people. So here we have the Jupiter Sun Cazimi taking place in your 12th house. The 12th house is a house of that gets kind of a bad reputation. It's the house of hidden things. It's a house of isolation. It's a house of, traditionally we're talking about really any area of life where we are somehow cloistered away from society writ large. And this modern world that we live in, the 12th house, I don't see it as necessarily a negative. And especially with Jupiter and the sun being here, it just, to me, the way I see it manifesting more so than anything else is unconscious blocks, unconscious ways in which we perhaps might self-sabotage. It's traditionally considered a house of hidden enemies, but quite often we find sometimes that the hidden enemy might be some unintegrated aspect of ourself that is working unknowingly to our conscious mind against us. And so when we see the full moon here in the sixth house, which is opposite the 12th, it is highlighting something to do with this axis. Now, one thing that Virgos are known for is working hard, right? Putting in the work. There can be a tendency to get caught up sometimes in the details, but it's one of those things where it can be quite easy to go overboard. We don't always have an unlimited capacity to get everything that we want to get done. And at some point, something is going to give. This house also speaks to the relationship between mental health and physical health. As we know, psychological issues can really literally have physical manifestations. And sometimes physical issues can really take a toll on our mental health. So these two houses are very, very inextricably related to each other, even though they talk about completely different things. So on one hand, we see Jupiter, who is a benefic planet in the 12th house. It can provide a tremendously healing energy. And if you have been struggling mentally in any way, having Jupiter here can in some ways feel like you're being supported, or that there's something that is in your court helping you through, any challenges that you face. That being said, with Pluto in your sixth house, that is transforming your daily habits, your daily routines. It's changing the way you relate to this part of your life. And with the North Node here, North Node signifies incoming energy. So we've got new energy coming in from Pisces as the North Node retrogresses into Aquarius. And we've got Pluto, who will be in Aquarius for the foreseeable future, let's just say. And these two energies are really going to, by the time the North Node gets into Capricorn, your daily routines, your daily structures, especially for Virgo risings, are going to probably look very different. With Uranus being in your 10th house, many of you might have experienced or be experiencing or will be experiencing changes in your career. And again, when we think of Uranus, there's always this fear of the unexpected, right? Because there's an element of the unknown. Is it going to be bad or is it going to be good? But Virgos, as a mutable sign ruled by Mercury, are uniquely equipped to roll with the punches from Uranus. If if this were a fixed sign situation, it could be more challenging. But with Virgos, they're very resourceful. Very, Virgo as a sign is known for being resourceful, known for being able to find solutions, workarounds, and fixes to things. So, here, any curveball that's thrown your way, I don't want to say I wouldn't be concerned, that it wouldn't be challenging, but as a Mercury ruled mutable sign, you along with Gemini, I think are better suited for Uranian energy than honestly most other signs. But we also have to address this Mars Venus square. Now, this is going to be felt especially for Virgos that have any placements, Virgo risings have any placements around 20-ish degrees of Gemini, Virgo, or really any of the mutable signs, Pisces, Sagittarius as well, because you'll be hit with these transiting planetary energies. But on a very general level, what we're seeing here is Mars is fueling a big appetite in the career department, but it's squaring Venus, who's in your first house. And to me, right off the bat, this looks like career pressure that is potentially creating some sense of inadequacy. Venus in Virgo is, it's debilitated there, but it can be an incredibly caring and giving placement to have. Venus in Virgo cares a lot about service to others, but quite often there is this underlying sense of inadequacy. Am I enough? Am I doing enough? And it can be very challenging. It can be a challenge. It can result in negative self-talk. It can result in feeling like no matter what I do, it's not enough. And that takes a toll, right? If that is you, with Jupiter and the Sun here in the 12th, it's asking you to reevaluate if any of those patterns, right? Because routines also include just the way we talk to ourselves on a daily basis, the internal dialogue that we have with ourselves, first and foremost, not just other people. And so I can see there being, this to me looks like demands from work that are really making you, and again, this is not going to be for everybody, but for some, feeling some sense of inadequacy. And it's being highlighted here in your 6th house of daily tasks, routines, and all of that. And so for some Virgos, I see this, as showing up as like burnout of some sort. It's not gonna be for everybody, but if there's an imbalance, if it's, if you're feeling depleted every day, that's a good sign that, that's going to be really highlighted here. And when we see these tough aspects, the sesquiquadrate, which is very similar to a square aspect, and we have this exact square with Mars and Venus, these are pushing you towards change in some regard, whether it is taking care of yourself mentally, taking a step back. There's such a focus on the physical external side of things with the 6th house, but quite often we forget just how closely, again, like I said, it's connected to the 12th house. If there is some sort of imbalance between your day-to-day life, and that is exacting a toll on your mental health in some way, that's going to really be put into focus here. Now, that's not going to be for everybody, but this is just a potential theme that I see with these planets in these households. But the good news is that Jupiter here, I mean, there is potential for tremendous healing, and this could just be like, I got to take a break. I got to take a long weekend to myself. This is a place, the 12th house, it's really anywhere where we just go to get away, a spiritual retreat, a long weekend, even just a walk in the woods is a 12th house activity. And so this is a really important time to be focused on your mental well-being, and physical, but I see here with Jupiter, really it's going to start on the mental level. Now with Uranus trining this full moon from the 10th, this, I see Uranus is a wild card, but it can really throw lifelines in, you know, Uranus, the outer planets are sort of beyond the duality of good and bad. And I even think that with benefic and malefic planets, that's not really fully accurate in terms of capturing what the planets mean. But Uranus here could be sending some sort of insight about how am I doing the work that I'm doing? Is there perhaps a different way, a more efficient way to do it so that it's not taking such a toll? Or it could even be like a new opportunity where you aren't going to have as many demands placed on you if they are taking a toll on your mental health, because Uranus is also sextiling this Sun Jupiter Cazimi. So he's speaking to Jupiter and the Sun too. He's speaking more loudly to the moon, but he's speaking to both. And what I see here is I would definitely pay attention. Anything that arises in the career, public life sector that could signal some sort of new innovative way of either doing the work that you do, or perhaps a new opportunity that fits more closely, is more aligned with what makes you happy. And so these are just themes to watch out for. Um, I do think that overall it's great. And honestly, with Jupiter being in the 12th, when Jupiter transited my 12th house, it was a profoundly beneficial. It's often an overlooked transit, but it is so necessary to have benefic planets transiting through here, because even if things seem okay on the surface, it's not always the case. And having Jupiter here, it can really help you address, and it's an unconscious house too. So we may on the surface feel as though everything's okay, because this speaks to such a large extent on an unconscious level. A lot of times we find it shines a light on areas that perhaps we might not have been cognizant of in the past. So I do think that this is, it's focusing the energy on the sixth house, but it is meant to improve, alchemize, release, and transform the way we show up in this department of life. So I do see this as tremendously beneficial. And I really hope that if you find yourself in challenging circumstances around these times, that there will be some solutions that present themselves, whether it be through Jupiter, Uranus, or a mixture of both. So that's what I had for you. I hope that you found this helpful. We will catch you on the next video. Take care. All right, Libra rising. This full moon is taking place in your fifth house of creativity, romance, children, leisure activities, recreational activities. Um, the fifth house is a good house. And so I don't know that it's going to be as quite as challenging for Libra risings as it is for some of the other signs, but we have the Jupiter Sun Cazimi taking place in your 11th house. And so it is highlighting this axis for you. Now, Jupiter in the 11th, when Jupiter is in the 11th, it's providing a lot of opportunities for expansion, whether it be through networking, just even finding new groups, organizations that you resonate with more. With the South Node also having recently retrogressed from Virgo into Leo in your 12th house, there's going to be some shedding of old ways of relating to the collectives that you're a part of. Now, here with the full moon conjunct Pluto, and Pluto's been in your fifth house, which is transforming the way that you relate to having fun. You know, this is I think that this is a lighter sort of energy. So hopefully it's not anything too crazy. But we have the North Node coming here, you know, down from Pisces into the fifth house, representing incoming cosmic energy being funneled into your fifth house. And on one hand, you're getting more opportunities with in the 11th house. And the 11th house also represents your highest goals that you have for yourself, like long-term goals, how you define happiness, how you define what is important. And for Libra, as a sign, just like Taurus, as both are ruled by Venus, values are important. And Libra's, unlike Taurus, where it's more sort of like internally focused, Libras define their values based to a pretty large extent on their relationships that they have with other people, not just romantic, any relationship. Now we've had Saturn going through your seventh house, which has been restricting, constricting sort of the way that you show up in significant relationships. And how that looks is going to really vary for based on your natal chart. But on one hand, Saturn provides structure, it provides discipline. So it may be a period of time where if you are in a relationship, it's growing, it's maturing, it's becoming, you know, you're faced with sort of more of the realities and the demands of being in a relationship. And Saturn is just station retrograde. So this, you know, especially for anybody with middle Libra placements, this is going to be a period in which you're going to be reviewing anything that's happened over the course of this year so far in that department. And again, relationships are not just romantic, it's any significant invested relationship you have with another person. We're not talking about acquaintances here. We're talking about deeper, whether it's a good friend, where it's a mutual investment. It's you have to put work into it. Once you start putting work into a relationship, then it does fall. It moves into the seventh house. So again, this is you know, Saturn is a contracting influence, and so it could be that you're downsizing your friend circle, you're sort of fine tuning who and what is important in your life. But with Jupiter in the 11th, this is providing opportunities to meet new people, to expand your social circle, to find different groups that you might resonate with more. We also see Uranus in your ninth house. The ninth house is a house of bigger horizons. It's a house of expansion. It's associated with foreign travel, higher education, higher learning, religion, spirituality. All of those things expand our consciousness in one way or the other, whether it's expanding literally our awareness or our knowledge, right? Through education, or our life experience through travel, through gaining a broader perspective by traveling to a different country, for example. And with Mars here, many of you have been feeling a strong urge, with Uranus here as well, a strong urge to manifest some of these higher ideals that Uranus promises. And Uranus is going to be in this house for the next 8 years. So it's just becoming highlighted, particularly right now, as Mars is also transiting the sign. But with it squaring Venus right now, for some, this could manifest as anxiety, right? If you have plans to move abroad, right? Venus is in Virgo is not doing well. And in this house, in the 12th house, it could just be unconscious feelings of like, you know, I'm afraid to leave my home country. Or no, I don't think I want to go back to school. I don't think I am good enough, or I don't think I'm smart enough. Venus and Virgo can be really self deprecating in a way, but this is just temporary energy. Oops. So, if you're having these concerns, anxieties about expanding in some way, that's what it's coming from. And once Venus will be entering your first house soon, and there's going to be a marked shift in tone, especially for Libra risings once Venus enters your first house. Now, she will be retrograding first and second house, but for right now, if you are having reservations about expanding in some area of your life, just know that it's this Mars square Venus. But really, with Uranus trining the moon here in your house of creativity, this is like the fun house, especially if there's anything that you want to do that is going to be exciting, right? Adventurous. This is a time to be adventurous, and don't let, if you're getting that voice that's saying, oh, well, what about this? What about that? It's this Venus. And she's not doing that to be mean, but Venus is your chart ruler. And that's just naturally how Venus is in Virgo. Venus always questions whether XYZ is enough, whether I'm enough, whether what I do is enough, whether I'm XYZ enough. So just know that you can expand in however way that you want to. If anything is going to be holding you back, it is going to be your unconscious assumptions about what your limitations are. But this is a house of expansion. And Jupiter here, is sextiling the planet of expansion, is sextiling Uranus. So this is not a time to disregard opportunities, dismiss opportunities because of some perceived inadequacy as far as like who you are as a person. You don't want to let potential extraordinary opportunities go to waste here. So, and I do think that it's part of this broader theme of redefining what fun means, what enjoyment means, what having a lust for life means. And this is really a time where you want to be mindful. You want to be mindful not just of any opportunities that come up, but any blockages that you may be perceiving with the Venus in the 12th house. Take a step back, approach it from a place of curiosity and not just accept it for face value, basically. But that's basically what I had. I really hope you enjoyed this video or you found it informative, and we will catch you next time. Take care. All right, Scorpio risings. This full moon is taking place in your 4th house, highlighting the axis of the 10th house of career, public recognition, public perception, and the fourth house of home, roots, family life. So these are two angular houses. So this is probably going to be a full moon that you're going to be feeling a bit more acutely um, than other signs. Now, you've got some real tension here on the Leo Aquarius axis because on one hand you've got Pluto, which has been transiting your fourth house of home, family, um, and the North Node has just retrogressed into the fourth house. So this is symbolizing transformation in your home life, whether it's literally moving, renovating, changing something about the physical home itself, or some changes into the situation. Moving in with a partner, for example, falls within the fourth house. On the other hand, we've got Jupiter, who has just entered your 10th house. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It's the planet of hope, optimism. It promises opportunities for expansion. So, for many of you, you might be feeling as though you're being pulled in two different directions here because there are likely, if there are not already, there likely will be at some point during Jupiter's transit through Leo over the next year, opportunities for expansion in terms of work. But of course, as we know, work and home is a push and pull. And the more you devote to one, it can be somewhat, to an extent, to the detriment of the other. So, with the South Node here in your 10th house, along with Jupiter, it makes for a real interesting dynamic because it indicates to me that yes, there are potential opportunities for expansion. You want to use your you really want to use your discernment, right? Is XYZ opportunity something that's really a good fit? Because Jupiter will throw all sorts of stuff your way. And the challenge here is to maintain a healthy balance, right? With Pluto alchemizing this area of your chart, there's going to be some tensions, right? If you find yourself giving too much in the career sector, you might find that there could be conflicts, for example, at home. This is just one example. It's not going to be the case for everybody, but that's just one way that things could play out. One other thing to keep in mind is that with Mars, your chart ruler traditionally being in the eighth house, there is a potential for power struggles, especially in the work realm. It's squaring Venus. This is the social house. So for some of you, you may be not quite as social as you normally are. You may be less inclined to, or you just may not even have the capacity, right? Depending on work demands and demands of home, there may just be not be a ton of energy to devote to your social life. And for some of you, that might be something you're feeling acutely. We're social creatures to an extent. We all need to have socialization. It can't just be about work and home. I'm pretty introverted, but even so, I definitely feel it when I'm not meeting my own social needs. So that might be something where you might be feeling as though either it's time to find new friend groups, new organizations, new, because this is a house of this is a very social house. It talks about not just social causes, but really any membership. I mean, really any group, friend group. It doesn't have to be, centered around any particular theme, so to speak. But with Venus here, it's speaking to a sense of, especially in Virgo, getting squared by Mars in the eighth house of endings and new beginnings, transformation. There might be some transformation, and Jupiter is likely going to present to you at some point during its transit through Leo with new opportunities. But more commonly, this is going to manifest as it's time to find a new social circle, or not necessarily find a completely new social circle, but find new groups, find new ways to spend my social time, because whatever is the status quo here is just not working. And it's being highlighted in your home life. So, again, with the moon here being at the very base, the root of the chart, for many Scorpios, Scorpio risings, you're going to be feeling this lunation very deeply. Scorpio is fixed water. It feels deeply as it is. However, this particularly true in this case because of where it's occurring in your chart. But what's going on in Aquarius right now, I see it as a good thing. When we have the North Node transiting, it is energy, cosmic energy coming in, which is fueling an appetite for increase. So this is about transforming some aspect of your home life in a way that is more aligned with where you are at on your journey. Now, with Uranus being in the 8th house, trining the moon, Uranus here is potentially offering some sort of solution, whether it be in terms of interpersonal relations in this part of your life, whether it's some solution as to any physical issues, literal with the structure of a home, or some aspect of, this is also the house of parents. So, we think commonly the 8th house is inheritance, parents. So that's going to be a very specific situation, but there could be some clear paths ahead in terms of dealing with any issues that arise for those who find themselves in those specific circumstances. But this is also your spouse's or partner's income, so unexpected changes. I have a much brighter view of Uranus than some other astrologers. If you are able to roll with the punches that it throws, it can really work in your favor in a really big way. So, pay attention, because if you find yourself in difficult circumstances when it comes to tension between home life and career, you might be finding that Uranus from the 8th house, it's offering you a solution. If you can recognize it, act upon it, it could really help ameliorate any sort of issues that come up during this time. That being said, Mars, Venus, this square is temporary energy. Venus will be moving into Libra, her domicile, in August. So any sort of consternation, any sort of feeling of restlessness when it comes to these specific matters in these houses are temporary. This is not going to be a permanent or a long lasting effect. It's just going to be highlighting certain themes that we really just want to pay attention to, right? It's just bringing them into focus for your review and possible action. That's basically what I had for Scorpios and Scorpio risings. I hope you found this informative, and thanks so much for watching, and we will catch you on the next video. Thanks. All right, Sagittarius rising. This full moon is happening in your 3rd house of short distance travel, communication, neighbors, your local community, siblings, family to a certain extent, aunts and uncles, normally extended family. But here, when I see these planets, the big theme, I think, is communication. This is a house of communication. And as Pluto has been transiting this sign, when Pluto is in any sign, in any house, it digs deep. And so for many of you, there is a decreasing tolerance for shallow communication, for shallow relationships, friendships, shallow dynamics. You're looking for something deeper. You're looking for something more meaningful. And whether that means closing out old relationships that don't serve your needs right now, or striving to build deeper and more meaningful bonds with people. This is really what Pluto in Aquarius in the third house is doing, or will be doing if it hasn't already. And this full moon is going to bring that to the focus. If you are feeling dissatisfied with how communication has been in your relationships, this is going to be brought into acute focus, not just because of the full moon, but because we have Mars in your seventh house of relationships, Uranus in your seventh house of relationships, bring unexpected changes. Mars feeling an appetite for something more, for something bigger and better than what it is. So any sort of dissatisfaction that you're feeling right now is likely going to be brought to the surface. And with this happening in the house of communication, you really want to exercise caution because the moon is our emotions and this is a fixed axis. And we want to really be mindful of the way that we are communicating because it's easy to go over the top sometimes with all of this energy. This north node is looking for more. This is, again, the north node is increase, cosmic increase. You're wanting something more, and there's more for you. Whether that means transforming the way you interact and communicate with others, or forging new paths ahead, blazing new trails in communication with new people who you do have deeper, more meaningful connections with. But I will say that Pluto in this house really is not going to tolerate inauthenticity with the people that you're interacting with. And ultimately that's a good thing. You know, Sagittarius is about truth. Sagittarius values truth. Sagittarius values honest, open communication. And when we speak of it in a general sense like that, of course, it's like, well, who doesn't? But it can be very difficult for some people. And it's not just because they want to lie to you, although that is also the case sometimes. But for many, there's a fear of vulnerability that keeps people from being their authentic selves. And if we can approach our relationships from a place of empathy, understanding that there might be reasons, you know, everybody's human, not everybody is capable of showing up the way we might like them to. And it may not have anything to do with us. It may just be some unconscious block on their part. But this is a time where having open, honest communication, trying to get to the bottom of if you feel as though some sort of communication with the people in your life is inauthentic in some way, is not serving you. It's a time where you're going to be making a decision about, do I try to salvage this, or do I just walk away? Of course, that's not an easy decision, but we also have Jupiter in your ninth house in Leo. The ninth house overlaps in many respects with the themes of Sagittarius as a sign. Sagittarius is all about expansion. It's all about broadening horizons in some way, whether it's actually traveling. Jupiter in the sign is going to bring opportunities for expansion, whether it's in terms of education, spirituality, travel, experiences in general. And so you may feel as though you've outgrown where you're at right now. Again, it's not going to be for everybody, but there's for many Sagittarians, your local area, wherever you are, is going to feel, and again, this is not going to be for everybody, likely, if it is the case, you've already felt it since Pluto has been in this house for a while now. But there's a sense of constraint, a sense of I need to, if you're feeling held back by your local community, Jupiter and the sun here is really bringing that into awareness. And this is a time where you can see the broader horizons. There's a sense of adventure that Jupiter is bringing in this house, and it's promising tremendously positive potential here. And so this is something where you might be feeling emotionally the ways in which you might be held back from going after those expansionary opportunities in life. And again, whether that is literally traveling, whether it is higher education, whether it is embarking on a spiritual path, this tension is going to be really highlighted. Now, we also have Uranus going through your seventh house, which is bringing transformative changes to your one-on-one invested relationships. And as I was telling, I want to say it was Leo, this house, this seventh house is not just about marriages and romantic partnerships. It's about any invested relationship. This is a house where it's more than an acquaintance level friendship. It's more than just a casual friendship. It is a deeper relationship where this would be like even good friends who you have an invested relationship in is going to fall in this house as well. And Mars, again, fueling a drive to redefine how, yourself and the other person. But of course, this does very much include romantic relationships and marriages. Now, with Mars in the seventh squaring Venus in the 10th, there is a component of career. Now, Venus here getting squared by Mars exactly, and these energies being funneled, you can't see the aspects because I have it adjusted to Sagittarius rising, so they've gone away, but they're both aspecting there they will be at the full moon by sesquiquadrate, which is basically a lighter version of a square, tense energy in the house of communication. So this could implicate disputes with coworkers or something having to do with relationships and career, whether it be the relationships, significant relationships that you have with your work colleagues, or some tension between you and your spouse or you and your partner when it comes to career matters. Am I balancing my career with the needs of the people that are important in my life? Again, that's not going to be a theme for everybody, but it's something to keep in mind. If that has been a theme that has been prominent over the past, few months, it's going to come to the forefront during this full moon. Beyond that, with Mercury having retrograded in your eighth house, there is likely been a review of, the eighth house is the house of death and rebirth, transformation, other people's assets, spouse's income. So there could be themes, partner's income, doesn't have to be a spouse, but the themes that are going on here, this is also power dynamic. So you may be reevaluating sort of relationship dynamics, intimacy, shared resources. And apologies, I don't know if you can hear that, but the crows decided to chime in with their feedback. Apparently, they had a lot to say about Mercury in the eighth house. But anyway, so you're coming out of this retrograde period with the eighth house with new ideas of where you stand in relation to others. So here, this is, there's not a lot of earth energy. We only have Venus here in Virgo. People always associate earth and water with being intuitive, especially water signs, but fire, the fire element is very intuitive as well. And Sagittarians, I would say more than most other signs, are normally quite in touch with their intuition. So this is a time where you really want to lean on it. What feels right? What feels most aligned with where you want to go? What feels most authentic? What feels most resonant with the path that you're on? And, I think that here with Uranus sending a trine to the moon, it could be providing some valuable insights into how you want to forge the path ahead. So I see this as actually being quite a positive full moon, one that is likely to be very revealing in a very valuable way for Sagittarius and Sagittarius risings, in terms of how you want to craft your life moving forward. So I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time. Okay, Capricorn. Oops, not Aquarius. Capricorn. So Capricorn rising, this full moon is taking place in your second house, highlighting earned income, values, self-worth, how you value your work, how you value your services. And the Jupiter Sun Cazimi is occurring in your eighth house of other people's income, assets. This is a house of transformation, debts, inheritances. And so the focus here is on the second house. The spotlight right now for Capricorn and Capricorn risings is on your income, your values, self-worth, and how you value your time and effort. With Pluto transiting this house, it is bringing transformative changes in this sector of your life. With Pluto here transiting, and again, this is really going to depend a lot on what planets are being, activated in your chart through this transit, but it brings enormous potential for transformation in earned income. And the North Node is representing increase. So there's an increased appetite, increased drive for renovating this part of your life in some way. Now, there is a tendency here to over identify with possessions, with the things that we assign value to, because Pluto is known for intense attachment. So that's something to keep in mind. And with the moon here, it's highlighting that in a big way. If we find ourselves getting overly attached emotionally to something that is material, that's when it's a time to take a step back and reevaluate, is this, XYZ really that important? This could be a time of redefining values. What is important? What is truly at the heart underneath everything? Because Pluto digs deep. Pluto does not leave any stone unturned. When we strip away everything, what is it that is important to me at the end of the day? I would say this is not a great time for making any large purchases, any large financial transactions. Emotions are heightened at this time, and so you may feel there may be a sense of urgency. Likely that is just something that is manufactured by these energies, which is very temporary. So I would caution against FOMOing, into something huge that you may end up regretting, right? Or not being, we don't want to rush. And I'm not as concerned with Capricorn risings, because Capricorn is a methodical sign. They don't jump into things for the most part, without taking their time doing their due diligence. But it's just something to keep in mind, because we all have emotions. We all have the potential of getting carried away. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, you've got Mars in the sixth house, as well as Uranus. With Mars transiting the sixth house, it brings an extraordinary amount of energy and capacity to get shit done. So, whenever Mars is in my sixth house, I find it's a very, very productive time for the most part. I just find like I can get a lot done, but there's always a tendency for burnout, especially if you've got any planets or placements in the third decan, so the last, I would say anywhere between 17 and 24 degrees of the mutables, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, we really don't, we want to avoid burnout because Mars can do that. Uranus is also the planet of disruption, unexpected changes, shifts. So then this is a house of daily routines, right? It's a daily grind. That's what Capricorn is good at, right? That's what makes Capricorn as a sign so successful, is that it is naturally able to put in place routines and structures that pave the way to achieve their higher goals. So, but it's always about balance, right? Because even Capricorns can get burnout. We all can. Now, with Venus having been transiting your ninth house, this is normally a pleasant transit. Even though Venus is debilitated in Virgo, it brings opportunities for travel, learning. You know, the ninth house is a house of expansion. It's about broadening our horizons. But with the square from Mars, there might be a tendency here to feel as though if you're a workaholic, which Capricorns are known to be sometimes, there might be a sense of, it's going to be emotionally highlighted in some way. Whether it's like, oh, I need to be, I'm not making enough money to be able to do, go on the trips that I want to go on, or I really want to go and get a different degree so I can make more money. Something like that might be brought into focus. So that's just something to keep in mind, because these two planets are also, you can't see the aspects here because I've adjusted it to Capricorn rising, so the aspect lines went away, but they're both hitting the moon with a sesquiquadrate aspect, which is akin to a square aspect. So tense energy all around being funneled to the moon, which funneled to the moon, which represents our emotions. So it's just something to keep in mind. With Jupiter and the sun here in the eighth house, this is a house of, again, transformation, other people's money, shared resources, partners' income. So if for those who have a partner or a spouse, there might be real opportunities for expansion in terms of their income. And it also, speaks to inheritances. This is something where you do want to be careful about spending. We want to avoid, again, large purchases that could result in debt, because Jupiter expands, a benefic planet, but expansion is not always necessarily a good thing, right? And again, this is something that the Capricorn is normally pretty sensible about this kind of stuff. So I'm not super concerned, but I do think that it's just something to watch out for. But this could bring potential, this is great for investing. Of course, you want to be careful and make sure that we're mindful of the macro level conditions. But this, Jupiter's transit through the eighth house for the next year, I think that even though the eighth house is known for being a challenging house, having a benefic planet here can really help with making things easier, more bearable for those who are going through transformations, changes in some aspect of your life. So I think it's a good thing. But again, we just really want to make sure that we're staying balanced and have a clear sense, and again, this is going to be an ongoing process with Pluto in the second of redefining our values, but this is promising hope and promising improvement in some way. So I see this as a very positive lunation as a general rule for Capricorn. All right, Capricorn, that's what I had for you. I hope you found this video helpful, and we will catch you next time. Take care. All right, Aquarius rising. This full moon is a heavy hitter for you guys. This is happening in your first house, putting you, how you relate to yourself, in the spotlight. We've got Pluto which has been transiting your first house of self, the way you relate to yourself, how you process things internally, is undergoing a big renovation. And this full moon is really acutely bringing that into focus. Now, this is a period for Aquarius risings where you're going to be asserting your individuality, sovereignty, autonomy in a way that perhaps you haven't before, right? This is about setting those boundaries, especially in relationships, but in general. With Jupiter in your seventh house of relationships in this Kazemi with the sun, Jupiter is a benefic planet. So as you go through the process of negotiating how you're showing up in relationships, redefining and revising that, the outcomes are likely to be positive just because we have Jupiter in this house. So this is a time where you can really step into your power, right? As you take the power that is rightfully yours. And if you felt as though there is or has been an imbalance, that you are giving too much, that the boundaries that you set in relationships are not working, this is a time where if they aren't working, it's going to be brought into focus. So this is a great time to reflect on where you're at in terms of relationship dynamics. Now, Saturn, which is a traditional ruler of Aquarius, has just turned retrograde in your third house of communication. So there is likely to be a communication component to that too, right? Because relationships are so much about communication. And with Saturn here retrograding in the middle of Aries, there are likely to be reviews in the way that you communicate. Habits in communication style are likely going to be reviewed without being able to effectively communicate our needs, our boundaries, and without, on both sides, right? The other person as well. When we leave things undefined, that is when there's potential for issues. So this is really, I see these energies as really collectively helping to alchemize the way that you show up in relationships and to improve the quality of relationships overall. One thing I do have to point out is that we have Mars in the fifth house, squaring Venus in the eighth house. I would say that for those who are dating, for those who are in a new relationship, there is a temptation to really rush in. And if you found yourself in a situation where either you've really wanted to rush into a relationship, and again, this is something that, at least for Aquarius suns, I'm not so sure about Aquarius risings. Aquarians don't really rush into things generally. And so if you find yourself dating somebody who wants to move really fast, that should be a very clear red flag, because this is like almost like wanting to bypass the seventh house, because the fifth house is the house of dating, romance, early days, sort of that stage in the relationship. And then the eighth house is all about like intimacy and like very, very close bonds, power dynamics, and stuff like that. So any pressure that you might be feeling, whether it be from another person or otherwise, I would caution, because with this Venus in the eighth getting squared by Mars in the fifth, any rushing into something is likely not going to turn out well. This is also not a great time for speculative investments or risk taking. I would just advise against it, at least until Mars is out of the sign. Not just because Mars is a malefic planet, but it's also squaring Venus in the eighth house, which can represent loss. So I would say just be careful with that. And lastly, one aspect that I love is this trine from Uranus from your fifth house to not only Pluto, but the moon. I know the moon is showing up as 13 degrees. It's just because I adjusted it to Aquarius rising. But this trine will be far more exact during the actual full moon, which occurred a couple hours before. But but with Uranus here in the fifth house, this is adding a component of creativity, of having fun. We can quite often get so caught up in just the day-to-day mundane realities of life that we forget to enjoy ourselves. And Uranus here is really saying, it's stressing the importance of, like, maybe we need to rethink how we are doing life, because part of our individuality is what we do in our free time. So there might be new opportunities. You may find that the things that you did in your free time they're no longer doing it for you. You may be looking at new opportunities, new ways, new areas of creative expression. And that's all part of defining and asserting your individuality, your sovereignty. It's what makes us all unique as individuals. So, and Mars also here is adding drive to actually go out there, find new things that fulfill us. So I see this as being a really good full moon for Aquarius risings. You've got a lot of good things going on in your seventh house. And I forgot to mention that with the North Node here representing increase, this is incoming energy into your first house. So this is energy that you can really work with as you redefine how you relate to yourself, as you redefine who it is you are as an individual. So again, and this is, with the South Node, this is speaking to shedding old ways of showing up in relationships, whether it is not setting boundaries that honor your individuality and sovereignty, or somehow having some sort of imbalance when it comes to relationships. This is a period, this next year is when there will be remarkable changes to how you relate to yourself and how you relate to other people. So I find this very exciting for Aquarians in general. And I think it's really a good thing. We just don't want to get too carried away. Again, with the emotions, the moon representing our feelings, imbalances are coming to a head. So if you are feeling emotional, it's likely a good time to step back and ask yourself what is at the heart of these feelings, because likely it is going to be something related to either one-on-one relationships, communication, something along those lines. But overall, again, I see it as a tremendously positive period for Aquarius. Yeah, wish you the best of luck. So thanks so much for watching, and we will catch you next time. Pisces rising. So this lunation is going to be happening in your 12th house. And I absolutely love where this is happening for Pisces risings. And I'll tell you why. But before I do, just to go over what's going on elsewhere in the sky, we've got the Jupiter Sun cazimi, which it isn't exact here because I've adjusted the ascendant to Pisces rising, but it will be cazimi during the full moon, which will be at 6 degrees of Aquarius, conjunct Pluto. We've got, again, this cazimi is happening in your 6th house of daily routines, the day-to-day stuff that we do, and our habits are basically daily life. And we've got Venus in your 7th house being squared by Mars in the 4th house of home, family life, our roots, parents. 7th house being the house of relationships, platonic or romantic. Any significant relationship is going to fall in this house. Now, the reason why I like this full moon so much for Pisces and Pisces risings is because it is happening in the 12th house. Now, many astrologers would say that the 12th house is an unfortunate house. And it's true that traditionally, traditional astrologers did not consider this to be a good house. It was considered the house of bad spirit. It spoke to isolation, prisons, hidden enemies, all that fun stuff. But although I primarily use traditional Hellenistic techniques, we live in a different world than they did in ancient Greece. And this is a very psychological house. We all have a 12th house. And when the ancients spoke of hidden enemies, they were speaking quite literally. But in this modern world that we live in, oftentimes the hidden enemy, and I don't know if it was Virgo, I was telling this in another sign's reading that the hidden enemy, more often than not, in my experience, is ourself, specifically unhealed parts of ourself that have not been fully alchemized or integrated. So Pluto transiting this 12th house is crucial in digging deep, getting to the bottom of any sort of unconscious self-sabotaging behaviors that are holding us back from truly realizing our full potential. So I see this full moon being extraordinarily powerful, especially for Pisces and Pisces risings, because full moons can shine a light on some of the dark recesses of this part of our chart. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. There's a lot of truth to that, in my opinion. I really, and not just because I'm a fan of Carl Jung, but because I found it to be very true in my personal life as somebody with 12th house planets that I've had to struggle with. They can really hold you back. And what makes this house so tricky is that so much of what goes on here flies completely under the radar in our conscious waking lives. Now, Pisces as a sign is the most intuitive, the most psychically inclined. However, it does not mean that you're going to catch everything. There's still going to be things that fly under the radar. Pluto going through this house will leave no stone unturned. Pluto is an excavator. It gets to the bottom of things, which is what we need when working in this house. Because, again, oftentimes we have these unhealed traumas that get packed away, but they don't really go away. They fester and they can manifest as these unconscious habits, whether it's self-sabotage, whether it is self-undoing, something where we are holding ourselves back and we don't know why, because we're not consciously aware. Some repressed trauma that maybe from even childhood or something in our past that needs to be brought up for review, acknowledgement, and healing. And this full moon is a tremendous opportunity for that. Now, I will say that it's going to likely manifest as a period of heightened anxiety just because for Pisces risings, it's happening in the 12th house. And the 12th house does speak to anxiety as a general rule. So it's not going to hit everybody the same. A lot of it depends. If you've got Aquarius placements, you might be feeling it, especially early Aquarius placements, or anything in the early fixed signs, Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo, or Taurus. But if you do find yourself feeling more anxious than usual, that is a cue to take a step back, pay attention, listen approach it from a place of curiosity. Oh, where is that feeling coming from? Most likely it is it's coming up for acknowledgement, and this is not something that happens all the time. So if you find yourself feeling a heightened sense during this full moon, definitely pay attention, because there could be some powerful healing potential here. Not just because, it's not easy, right? Healing is not normally an easy, fun process. Sometimes it requires confronting truths and realities that we would rather not. It's uncomfortable. It's not easy, but it's necessary. With Jupiter in your sixth house speaks to your daily habits, your daily tasks. And quite often, I was telling Virgo this because Virgo is having their full moon in the sixth house with Jupiter in the 12th, but there is a very strong connection between the sixth house of our daily lives, our habits, our routines, and the 12th house, which again is a psychological house. It's incredible how much, at least, even speaking for myself, again, as somebody who's struggled with challenging 12th house placements, it is remarkable just how much unhealed traumas can manifest in your daily life, and you don't even realize it. So this is really speaking to that connection. With Jupiter here, it's providing healing energy. Pisces is traditionally ruled by Jupiter. So this is your traditional chart ruler going through your sixth house, offering you the opportunity to expand and improve and alchemize aspects of your daily life in a way that could really make a tremendous difference. However, it is going to require a little bit of work here with Pluto in not only recognizing if, and again, this is not going to apply to every Pisces rising, but for those that it does apply to, it's going to require a little bit of work to recognize any sort of unconscious blocks that you may have that is keeping you from living a more fully realized life. Now, I don't love this superior square from Mars to Venus, right? Venus is in your seventh house. Normally Venus transits through the seventh is a pleasant period. It's good, even though Venus is debilitated in Virgo. It's normally a pleasant period for relationships, but this full moon period with Mars being in the first, I do see there being a potential for disputes with partners or family, anybody who you live with and have even like roommate situation. So I would just be careful about that. It could have something to do with some aspect of daily life. But if it does occur, again, and you can't see the aspects because, again, I don't have it exact to the full moon because I adjusted it for Pisces rising. But if there are disputes that come up, it could also be speaking to potential 12th house issues. But again, this is really what I consider to be a quite positive full moon in that it is offering an opportunity to draw up hidden traumas, hidden wounds from the past, up for acknowledgement, cleansing, release, and ultimately healing and alchemy, right? Pluto is often maligned as a difficult planet that brings hardship, but at the end of the day, what Pluto signifies is digging deep. And if you approach it with a willingness, an openness, not a resistance, curiosity to transform, it can bring tremendous results. I can't stress the importance of having an open mind and open heart as we enter this full moon period. And, staying grounded is going to be key. This full moon is for Pisces risings. If you find yourself getting overwhelmed in some way, getting out in nature, even just going for a walk, grounding will be very, very beneficial. But again, overall, I think that you can expect there to be some degree of intensity, but ultimately I see this as very positive. And the last thing I'll point out here is that we have Uranus in the 4th house, trining this full moon. Now, this could manifest as some unexpected information about your family, upbringing, past that could shine a light somehow on something that you weren't aware of. So how that specifically manifests, it's going to be obviously very individualized. It could just be an unexpected change in circumstance where, if you find yourself in a living situation that is not serving you, you might be getting some revelations, right? You might be presented with solutions, whether it be relocate. And again, this is very, very hyper specific. Not every Pisces rising is going to be dealing with this, but there's going to, on some level, be some sort of insight or perhaps a disruption with Uranus being in the 4th house. Along with Mars, we can't rule out there being like a power outage or something along those lines, but I wouldn't be super, super concerned about it. It's just something to be mindful of. Ultimately, I see this as a positive with North Node, again, coming through, just retrogressing from your 1st house into your 12th. This is healing energy that is coming in that is up for grabs, and it's up to us to take advantage of it. But I think if you do, you'll find any areas that are in need of healing in this part of your life, there's potential for tremendous progress in that regard, which will ultimately result in potentially extraordinary improvements in quality of life in general. So that's pretty much what I had for you guys, Pisces. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and found it informative, and we will catch you next time.